Nixon continued his backdoor communications with President Thieu. But by now, President Johnson had ordered the FBI to mount surveillance on Anna Chennault and the ambassador. Summaries of the wiretaps were telexed direct to the White House. The results of that surveillance have never been disclosed until now.
One document in particular is really telltale. It's the intercept of a conversation between Anna Chennault and the South Vietnamese ambassador, in which she says that her boss wanted to send the message to Saigon, hold on, we're going to win, meaning, hold on, don't go to the peace talks in Paris, we're going to win the election, and you're going to get a better deal from a Nixon administration. How do we know who her boss was?
The boss means Richard Nixon, and the message was for President Thieu to hold on, as he had promised that he would not go to Paris peace talk.
As Nixon crisscrossed the country, his campaign manager, John Mitchell, was on the phone to Chennault almost every day. The message she passed from Nixon to Thieu, Chennault now says, was essentially, stay away from Paris and the peace talks.
President Thieu was very frustrated because he felt that he was being pushed and forced to go to the Paris peace talk. And the message to President Thieu was, at this time, it would not be in our favor or in your favor to go to Paris peace talk. So that was the message Nixon asked me to give to Thieu.
On October the 31st, John Mitchell, Nixon's closest aide, called Anna Chennault and asked her to call him back on a safe phone.
And Mitchell answered the call personally and sounded very nervous and said, Anna, are you sure? Nixon was very worried if Thieu at the last minute give in and play the Democrat game, that might be harmful to the Nixon's campaign.
November the 2nd, just 3 days before the election, news reached the White House that South Vietnam greatly regrets not being able to take part in the peace talks.
Early November was sort of the crowning blow. To have his own ally balking was certainly not, did not leave a good taste in his mouth.
With the peace initiative dead in the water, Nixon forged ahead of Humphrey in the polls. But he feared that LBJ could still rob him of victory by going public with his suspicions. That evening, Nixon called Johnson to deny all personal involvement and insist that Anna Chennault must be working on her own initiative. The election was now only hours away. America went to the polls. The result was close enough for Vietnam to have been a decisive factor.
They massively interfered in an international negotiation on the eve of an election to influence it in their favor. They succeeded. And when you look at the result, Nixon winning by 499,000 votes, there's little doubt that that shifted enough votes at the end to save the election for Nixon.
Having lost a close one 8 years ago and having won a close one this year, I can say this: winning's a lot more fun.
When he knew he had won and he was tired, he had been up for probably almost 24 hours following the results. President-elect Nixon at that time was almost in disbelief. He had to really grab a hold of the fact that finally he had achieved the goal of the presidency of the United States.
After the election, Nixon met with LBJ. Johnson decided he could not blow the whistle on Nixon by going public with the secret wiretaps. Instead, he may have used them to, in effect, blackmail the new president.
It is quite probable that President Johnson, in his own blunt way, told President Nixon that he had the goods on him, and that he hoped sincerely that President Nixon would continue his policies, particularly in trying to further the peace talks.
That I can confirm, you see. Because of that, Nixon became more careful in handling the problem of Vietnam.
If progress is to be made on matters like Vietnam, it can
As
be
LBJ
made
looked
only
on, Nixon jettisoned all the promises he had made privately to the South Vietnamese.
the current administration is setting forth policies that will be carried forward by the next administration. And the point that I think...
Within a week, he wanted me to go to Vietnam to persuade to go to the Paris peace talk. And I had such feeling that we're being betrayed, that how could you do this to so-called a friend who helps you to win the elections?
January the 20th, 1969, was one of the proudest days in Nixon's life. It was the day of his inauguration. In his speech, he pledged that the keystone of his presidency would be peace.
This honor now beckons America, the chance to help lead the world at last out of the valley of turmoil and onto that high ground of peace that man has dreamed of since the dawn of civilization. The greatest honor history can bestow is the title of peacemaker.
Down the years, it's been possible for Nixon loyalists to suggest that it may have been done by people close to Nixon, but not Nixon himself. Reading the new FBI releases, it is very difficult to sustain that argument.
A full 6 months had passed before Nixon met the man he had double-crossed. He finally met President Thieu on the Pacific island of Midway.
We expected to have a real summit meeting dealing with the overall aspects of the war, the enemy. Instead of that, we had a very short meeting in a faraway island for, let's say, a few hours during a day. It is up to other people to use the word betrayal, but there was a very sour feeling in our heart about the American.
Richard Nixon had always been a hawk on Vietnam. Richard Nixon was probably the first politician ever to suggest that the Americans went into Vietnam. When Nixon became president, it became very clear to the South Vietnamese very quickly that now that he'd won, now that he'd got what he wanted and was president, that Nixon wanted out of Vietnam as fast as he could.
The whole series of events created a debt from Nixon to Thieu, and Thieu, in effect, could say to Nixon, look, I helped you when you needed me. Don't you tell me what to do.
Vietnamese intransigence made peace elusive, and the war dragged on for another 4 years. Nixon's decision to play politics with peace cost many thousands of lives, Vietnamese and American.